Cohen, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusivity Officer at the MEDC. February is Black History Month, and today we're talking with LeTasha Peebles with MEDC's Entrepreneurship and Innovation team about how prioritizing support for Black women and minority-owned businesses and entrepreneurs can help drive economic growth and prosperity across all of Michigan. So thank you for joining us today, LeTasha.
Thank you for having me.
All right, well, let's start with a little bit of background. How did you first start with the Entrepreneurship and Innovation team, and what's your current role?
I joined the Entrepreneurship and Innovation team in 2015. I came directly from the Michigan development team, where I was working with larger scale companies who were diversifying and growing in Michigan. And so as a result, my current role is on the Entrepreneurship and Innovation team as a grant manager, and I'm also responsible for all the data and reporting associated.
Awesome. Well, your role with MEDC's Entrepreneurship and Innovation team has allowed you to work with organizations that support entrepreneurs and small business owners in many different industries. What would you say that experience has been like for you?
I would absolutely say that this experience has been great for me. It's been truly rewarding. Again, like I said, I came from the business development side where I was working primarily with very large scale companies. So quite honestly, when I joined the team, I wasn't fully aware of all of the services that we provide to entrepreneurs and small businesses. So in particular, I'd like to highlight our SMART zones, which are strategically designated business accelerators throughout the state. I was unaware that we had this set up to help entrepreneurs at the beginning of their entrepreneurial journey. And then on top of that, we have the university programs that are helping commercialize technology. And of course, we have good partners like the Michigan Small Business Development Center that are also helping entrepreneurs with business plans and access to critical resources. So for me, watching these organizations go out of their way to help entrepreneurs and just really drive small businesses forward has been great.
I'm really excited that we get to talk about this today. I think that a lot of people, when they think about MEDC, they really think about those large incentives with the big job creators, and not to discount the importance of those at all, because those are transformational for the state. But to be able to talk about our focus on small business as well is pretty exciting.
Yeah. So I'd like to kind of turn that question back over to you. In your new role, you're focused solely on DEI at MEDC, and I'm curious to know, what has your experience been like as far as the feedback that you've received from small businesses and organizations that support them?
Yeah, well, since I've taken this role, I've had the opportunity to engage with a variety of different organizations and that supports entrepreneurs and small business owners, and even a few small businesses themselves, just to try and really get a grasp on what we can do better as an organization to support under-resourced communities and business owners. Honestly, it's been a really humbling experience for me. We certainly have a huge job to do, and it's a job that's never really complete. But on the flip side, I really look forward to having this opportunity. I think it's amazing to think that we can not only impact the current entrepreneurs and small business owners, but create a climate for future generations of entrepreneurs as well.
Well said. Could not agree more.
Well, so in 2020, you were part of MEDC's effort to partner with Michigan Women Forward to create the Michigan Entrepreneur Resilience Fund, which prioritized support for women and communities of color at a time where there weren't really many equitable resources for diverse-owned businesses and entrepreneurs to receive support. How did that partnership come together, and what kind of impact has it had in the last year and a half?
So my initial introduction to Michigan Women Forward came by way of their business pitch competition. I actually had a friend of mine who was a participant in that. And after observing that, I was blown away at how well they did in terms of preparing entrepreneurs and all the resources that they were providing. And so from there, my colleague, Maggie McCammon, and I really developed a relationship with the organization and continued that. So when the pandemic hit, and we saw how it disproportionately affected small businesses, and particularly those small businesses owned by women and minorities, we knew that we had to do something and we had to act quickly. And so our first initial thought was to set up a microloan and grant program, just because we saw a gap in our current programming that was not addressing that need. So we knew through our partnership and a relationship with Michigan Women Forward that we had a great candidate for that, as they were already an SBA approved microlender. They were successfully operating in the space. And so we worked diligently on a proposal, and then that became the Michigan Entrepreneurial Resilience Fund, which we launched in June of 2020. So with that launch, I'm really, really proud to say and excited that we were able to help almost 200 small businesses from the UP to Detroit. And so of those small businesses, 73% of those were located in disadvantaged areas. 48% of those were owned by minorities, with 80% of those owned by women. And along with that, we were able to create 115 new jobs, retain 252, and these businesses saw an increase of revenue of over $8 million. So that, to me, sends a strong message of how we can invest at a very early stage and see a critical return, even in light of the pandemic.
I mean, so to your point, I mean, as you said, the COVID-19 pandemic really disproportionately affected communities of color, you know, both from the health aspect and from the economic aspect. How has that changed the way that you're looking at supporting businesses, and how do you think we change things going forward?
I think for me, again, that critical gap is necessary. So that gap being entrepreneurs who are at a very early stage, who may not be bankable. And I know with your background, you're very familiar with this. They may not be ready for a traditional financing source, but they still need the help. And so from our perspective, I think that our biggest takeaway was that we need to make sure that we're removing a barrier to access of critical capital needed to help fund these organizations and small businesses. We do not want to risk having small businesses close their doors because of a $5,000 difference. So for us, I think that was a large takeaway.
Awesome. Are there any like specific stories that really stand out for you from your work with Michigan Entrepreneurial Resilience Fund?
Yes. So if you've heard this story before, bear with me, but it's a story worth telling. I would go to Commodities Tea Company. They're based out of Detroit, women-owned and Black-owned. And I remember as being a part of the review team and seeing their application come through. And when you look at how negatively impacted they were by the pandemic, you could see even in their cost analysis sheet that they were losing revenue as a result of being shuttered. And like many small businesses, a lot of people were going through that. But the interesting part about this particular business is that they were entertaining a potential contract with Wayfair to carry their product. And so I remember talking to the review team, and we all just sat there and said, we do not want to be the difference between them achieving this and not. And so that the funding that they received, they used to increase their revenue so that they were prepared for the proposal. And when the proposal did go through, they did end up landing the Wayfair contract. And not only that, but it opened up the door for them to get into Walmart as well. And they're also entertaining some other e-commerce business opportunities. So not only did it change the trajectory of how they were doing business because it was retail, face to face, but it also opened a new revenue stream for them that they probably wouldn't have stepped into had it not been for the pandemic. So as a result, their 2020 year was their best ever. So I think that's incredible to say that, again, in the wake of a pandemic, we have companies like that are coming out so strongly.
Excellent. It looks like we have a question from Milton. He's asking, how can my apparel manufacturing get connected?
So we have multiple opportunities at the MEDC for small businesses and support. I know we were going to mention that later on, but I would recommend that if you're interested in those, to go visit our website at michiganbusiness.org/entrepreneurship to get connected to some of our resources.
Excellent. What do you think are some lessons learned from the Michigan Entrepreneur Resilience Fund that impacted small business owners, and how can we look to resolve some of those things?
Oh, we learned a lot. Absolutely. This was as you can imagine, a pilot program. So we were all learning as we went along in terms of the people on the MEDC side. And so I would say first and foremost, the technical assistance component was critical. That's one thing that I'd like to definitely commend Michigan Women Forward on, is that as a micro lender who was existing in the space, they knew how important it was to ensure that resources beyond just initial funding was available for these entrepreneurs. So technical assistance was critical, and in particular, financial literacy. That was probably the first and foremost and most important. As you can imagine, again, with your background, when we had small businesses coming in and applying for microloans, there is a portion of that that requires income and cash flow statements. And so we had entrepreneurs who maybe had never done that before or never invested in that part of their business. And so Michigan Women Forward, as a result, created a video tutorial to help walk entrepreneurs through that process. Just again, to make sure that that was not going to be another barrier to entry and access. On top of that, we all have heard this, but it's very important, and that is the digital divide. So we had, again, entrepreneurs who were working their business off their cell phone.
Absolutely.
And when it comes down to expanding your business and growing, you're going to need critical software and support. And so that's another thing that Michigan Women Forward partnered on with some other organizations to provide resources such as computers and QuickBooks and software that was going to help these entrepreneurs move to the next level. And then finally, legal issues were also a big one that I never would have thought of before prior to this experience. And so one of the things that's important to consider is when you're looking at credit and credit history, especially if you have maybe a lower credit score, what are the implications of that? Why did that happen? Is it a result of maybe a dissolution of a marriage or perhaps medical bills? And so those factors are important, but they shouldn't exclude people from getting the access to credit that they need. And finally, lease negotiation. We had entrepreneurs who were doing great as far as their, having a very positive cash flow. But when it came to their lease, it was taking more than half of their revenue. And so really making sure that they have entrepreneurs are connected to legal services and legal aid that's going to help them negotiate things that are going to work best for their business and not take away is very important. And so those are all things that we learned that Michigan Women Forward was able to provide resources and connections for.
And that's amazing. And I think that is, the pandemic itself really highlighted a lot of those needs, but especially when you look at all of the resources and grants and things of that nature that were kind of flooding at people. And a lot of those things that you needed were those financial statements and things of that nature. And people just didn't have them. And so they weren't able to access a lot of those grants and loans that were available because they just weren't in a position to be ready for them. So I'm excited that some of that assistance is being provided now, so that in the event that things are available in the future, they're able to access those. It looks like we have another question. How do we become connected to the MEDC to help find grants to support my business type? We are a consultants firm research.
So once again, if you go directly to our website, michiganbusiness.org/entrepreneurship, there's also an opportunity on our website in that location to sign up for our newsletter. And that newsletter provides any new funding opportunities, anything that is pertinent to your small business. And so that's a great way to stay connected to us and what we're doing and offering.
I guess my next question for you, LeTasha, is how can expanding opportunity for women and people of color have a positive impact on Michigan's entrepreneurial ecosystem and the state's economy overall?
I think that initially we're kind of conditioned, and even I was prior to joining the Entrepreneurship and Innovation team, to think that a return on investment has to be a huge company. And not to take away from the importance of that, but we have small businesses that require little investment that have big dividends and returns over a longer term. And so again, I go back to my example of commodities, who not only have secured, the additional business with Wayfair, but as a result is going to have to expand their business into a new location. So that's investment there. They're also going to have to hire more people and pay wages to support that additional investment. Another great example is a company called Skinforia. They're a clinical skincare line and boutique out of the Detroit area. And they actually utilized Michigan Women Forward at a time when they were getting a lot of no's. And so this is not uncommon for small businesses, especially when you are women-owned or minority-owned. And so as a result of getting investment from Michigan Women Forward, it kind of started this trajectory for this company. And so they started, they set up in Royal Oak. And then from there, they opened a second location in Corktown. And then recently, there was an article that was published that showed that they are now bringing in over $1 million in revenue. So again, 2 locations, multiple staff, wages, investment, and then they are also looking at franchising opportunities. So this is all, again, returning investment off of one small seed that was placed in the beginning.
That's amazing. Okay, so and I think we've said this a few times, but for entrepreneurs and business owners who are joining us today, what resources are available through the MEDC?
So resources that are available, well, number one, we have our Smart Zone and our Smart Zone business accelerators. We have 21 in total. They're across the state, and so they are available to help small businesses. We also have our university systems. We also have other community development based. We have our Pure Michigan Business Connect, and many other resources available. So again, at michiganbusiness.org/entrepreneurship, if you go directly there on our site, you can see everything that we have to offer. And I even want to offer an opportunity for you to share. We have our Capital Access Program, which you have a background on. So what would you say from your position would allow, what would you share in terms of helping entrepreneurs and providing resources in terms of what we have available?
For the Capital Access team, we definitely work more with lenders, traditional and not. So even partners like Michigan Women Forward and other CDFIs across the state. And so connecting with the lender and kind of letting them know about MEDC programmings and things of that nature can help kind of start the conversation. But I think there's more to come. I think that we are really trying to expand how we assist small business, and especially for small businesses for women, minorities, and entrepreneurs of color. So I think there's more to come, and it's going to be really exciting to see where MEDC goes.
Absolutely.
We do have a question from Shayna. She says, do you have any special programs for small businesses in rural communities? I can let you start and then I can finish.
No, go right ahead. Go right ahead.
Well, the only thing I was going to say about small business in rural communities, I don't think we have anything specifically just for the rural communities. I think that all of our small business programming is accessible to everybody. But I do know that there is a heightened focus on a lot of the making sure that we're serving our rural communities just as equally as we would in any urban area. So, but yeah, I think at this point in time, I don't think there's anything special just designated for rural communities. But I don't know if you had anything to add there.
No, I think you're spot on with that. I think, again, as we build out and look at helping women and entrepreneurs of color, we're also looking at being very intentionally focused on rural opportunities as well.
Excellent. Well, I am really excited that we get to have this conversation today. I'm excited as an organization that we get to help implement, practices and policies that ensure that all Michiganders can be active participants in our economy, which is really just going to help our state thrive as a whole. So, thank you, LeTasha, for joining us today to highlight the importance of DEI and how MEDC's efforts are supporting economic opportunity for Michiganders all year round.
Thank you.
And thanks to everyone who watching who joined us today. To learn more, please visit michiganbusiness.org.